NWP Radio.
You're listening to NWP Radio, a production of the National Writing Project.
NWP. NWP Radio.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another special edition of the National Writing Project's The Right Time, a show that brings teachers together with writers and visionaries together with classroom possibilities. I'm Brian Ripley Crandall, and I couldn't be more awestruck than I am right now with tonight's show. Anyone who has been in my classroom or seen me present locally or nationally recognizes how much admiration I have for anyone who dedicates their lives for the wellness of others and who step up and into the world with a vision for humanity and justice. So in 2009, when I first began doctoral studies in literacy with a focus on the writing of 8 African-born refugee background young men, I discovered the story of Luma Mufleh. Ever since, I have used her work, the videos online, and her inspiration with schools across the nation. You can imagine my surprise when I saw not one, but 2 books coming out as advanced readers with her story. She has been a northern star that guides my own purpose in life, especially with refugee background youth. I am thrilled to announce she's here with us tonight as a special guest on our show. But first, Tanya, my West Coast friend, it's been a while since I've seen you. How have you been?
Well, Brian, my life is a little bit less colorful when we're not regularly recording Right Time. So I'm so glad that we're back together. As you know, yesterday was the summer solstice, which means really the beginning of professional learning deep professional learning for a lot of teachers who spend their summers doing that. And I'm so glad that we're kicking off summer for the Writing Project with this show. What else do I have to say? I'm Tanya Baker. I'm the Director of National Programs, and I really couldn't be happier to co-host tonight's show. Many of our teachers across the network have dedicated themselves to young people, and many of those young people have arrived in the United States from extraordinary circumstances. And that's why we felt that Luma Mufleh's young adult book, Learning America, One Woman's Fight for Educational Justice for Refugee Children, published by HarperCollins, and the memoir From Here, published by Nancy Paulson Books, needed to be featured and celebrated with teachers. Not only is Luma Mufleh with us tonight to discuss writing, but we are thrilled to have teachers William King and Jessica Baldizon, both of Bridgeport Public Schools, as guest interviewers. Like Brian, Jessica and William have also admired Luma Mufleh from afar, and we couldn't think of a better pairing for tonight's conversation. Luma, William, and Jessica, welcome to the show.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So I have the honor of introducing our writer guest. Luma Mufleh is an activist, twice published author, entrepreneur, coach, and thought leader in refugee and English language learner education. As an asylee, as well as a daughter and granddaughter of Syrian refugees, Luma continues to draw on her personal experiences to fuel her passion for empowering refugee and immigrant children through education. In 2006, she founded Fugees Family, right? Which is the work that she's been doing, not only changing the lives of children and families here, but also shifting the narrative around refugees from one of fear to one of courage and resilience. Her TED Talk on educational justice has been viewed more than 1.8 million times. I think probably 5 or 6 of those are mine. She is the author of 2 books, 2022's Learning America, which I have in my hand right now, One Woman's Fight for Educational Justice for Refugee Children, and the very recently, 2023 memoir, From Here, which just arrived to my house, and I'm excited. And Tanya, if you'll introduce the teachers, that'd be great.
Of course, it's my pleasure. If I can make my slides work. First, I'd like to introduce Jessica. Jessica Baldizon is in her 8th year working as a certified teacher of English to speakers of other languages. She serves as a service learning coordinator and a school-university partnership liaison aimed at improving learning outcomes and promoting educational equity. She's a co-founder and program coordinator for Hope Club, harboring optimism and perseverance through education. She also founded a young ladies book club for multilingual learners. She works with the Connecticut Writing Project at Fairfield University, teaching Little Labs for Big Imaginations and Ubuntu Academy for young writers from ages 8 to 18. No matter the learning space, Jessica makes sure to include community building exercises, opportunities for collaboration, and chances for young authors to present their work. Jessica shares her love of people and words with students by encouraging them to write their stories through creative, colorful thinking. And with us all tonight is William King. William has been working with inner city youth for over 16 years. He's currently employed as a high school ESOL teacher in one of the state's largest urban districts. William has found inspiration in his position as co-founder and program coordinator for Hope Club, a weekly after-school program which affords high school English learners opportunities to extend their language skills and community. William enjoys teaching Ubuntu Academy and sports literacy labs during the summer with the Connecticut Writing Project at Fairfield University. He encourages his students and colleagues to reflect and build on their shared experiences. As a result, he is serving his community by assisting with the development of a collective aptitude which will drive innovation and equity as a means of positively moving today's youth into the modern era. And now it's my pleasure to turn the show over to William and Jessica, who will introduce a writing prompt to open tonight's show.
Hello, everyone. In keeping with the National Writing Project way, we want to offer the prompt that you see and invite you to write about a time when you arrived for the first time to a new location. Write about what it felt like entering this new space and how you felt or did not feel that you belonged.
Well, we wish you the best conversation ever. We'll sit back with our tissues, and no, actually we'll sit back with our hearts feeling large because of the inspiration of tonight's show. So we're signing off and have a great conversation.
All right.
Go ahead, Will.
How much time you want to give me?
As little as possible so I can ask all the questions that I am burning in my heart to ask Luma.
Okay. Luma. So many of the questions we have for you as an activist, educator, dreamer, and leader are answered in your new book, Learning America. Some of them, I would say. As Brian said earlier, we've been following your career as a way to do the work we do with young people. With this said, perhaps a good first question is, why did you choose to tell the story in your own book? One written for young readers. How did this book come to be? And I just have to give you some backstory. When I read Outcast United, your character was equally real to me as the entire refugee story that I was learning about. So this question for me is dear at heart because your story is integral to everything. And I kind of wanted you to elaborate a little bit more on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Outcast United came out in 2007, and it was, a lot about the soccer season, and it was written about us, and I have some issues with the way it was written, and how it portrayed all the different characters, and it wasn't my experience, right? It was seen through someone else's lens, and what was it like? 10 years later, I gave a TED talk. I was approached to write a book after that. I was like, not ready. I don't have time. I'm running an organization. And then I got this fellowship with the Emerson Collective, and a lot of it is around communication and storytelling and your own narrative. And again, I was approached to write a book. I was like, okay, maybe now's the time. Maybe now I actually have a story to tell. And it was also the timing. I had this one incident with a student. We were driving to a game, and he's like, "Coach, are you a refugee or an immigrant?" And I was like, "Well, what do you think?" He's like, "I think you're an immigrant." And I was like, "Why do you think I'm an immigrant?" He's like, "Well, because you have this like successful organization. People know about you. You have a beautiful house. You're married to an American woman. I was like, oh, there's so many layers of what is built into him identifying what is an immigrant and what is success, right? And I said, actually, I'm a refugee. You know, the car got quiet and I explained a sliver of my story to him. And he's like, Coach, you make us tell our stories and share our stories, and you have to share yours because I'm going to read that book. And this is not a kid who's a reader. So I was like, all right, this is going to get him to read. And I think story has the power to change people's mindsets and perceptions. And so when I started out end of 2019, writing the book proposal, I initially was pitching Learning America, actually not an adult memoir. And then two different editors saw it very differently. One is like, no, you have a social justice memoir about your work with your backstory weaved in, which ended up being Learning America. And another editor is like, you have a young adult book, and it's a story of you growing up in the Middle East. And it ended up being the book I wish I had when I started this work, you know, that was like authentic and messy and like just telling people what happens, right? And then the other one's the book I wish I had growing up as a gay Arab Muslim, thinking I was the only one in the world. And so and then the pandemic hit, which allowed me to write. I didn't travel as much and got to write, and it was very therapeutic, and ended up launching a different initiative for our organization, taking us in a different direction.
Thank you for
It feels
sharing.
surreal.
Yeah,
my turn, because it is surreal to be here. And if I don't get my questions, I don't know what I will do, because I read your book, Luma, and I kept thinking, I need to ask on this. I wonder about that. And it's everything. You know, I am a public school teacher. I am the daughter of immigrants who came to this country as a result of war. There's just so many things that I want to know. But one of them is, you know, we offered teachers and students this opportunity to write about belonging. And viewers may have seen that you became a U.S. citizen in front of your students. So we're just curious to know, what are your thoughts on this word, which of course stands for so many things and has so many layers, as you continue to be a role model for us, for your students, and so many.
The word belonging. And I mean, I think, you know, when everyone asks, hey, what is it that you guys do at your schools is like so different. You know, they want the curriculum, they want the playbook. And I was like, we create belonging, because when people feel they can be their whole selves, don't have to code switch, don't have to like pretend they know something or hide, where they are seen and valued for who they are, that is when they thrive. And some of it is simple, right? Like some of it is as simple as being greeted with a smile, you know, teachers learning a few phrases from your language, sharing food, playing together, like find your commonalities, and then your differences, it just comes together, right? You end up celebrating your differences, right? But if we focus on our differences, we never find common ground. And so that's what we do. We meet kids where they are and play together, play on soccer teams. You know, I think sports teams are really powerful at creating, if done right, you belong to a team that has your back no matter what, right? And if you don't have to hide who you are, and you're not being mocked for who you are or judged for who you are, like that's where you want to be all the time.
I think that was something that stood out to me too, as you were describing how the students have to belong to the soccer team, that they have to try a musical instrument, that they have to participate in the arts overall. So it really seems to like this invitation to try out all of these different possibilities.
Yeah,
versus...
it's like athletics and the arts are usually not accessible to everyone, right? You have to pay for it, or mom and dad can pick you up after school, or you're signing up for camps, or only the elite get to play sports. And I'm like, that's just ridiculous. Like everyone needs to be playing it all the time. And it doesn't have to be soccer. For our community, that is what is familiar, that is a positive association with their countries of origin. But it could be any team sport, you know? And why do we put obstacles to that access? Why do we cut out the arts when kids thrive and love it? You know, when you ask a lot of kids or adults now, like what was their most important thing in school? like what got them through high school. They're not going to say English class, maybe a handful, but the majority of kids are going to say that the sports team they played in, the after school club, the play they were a part of, the art show they created. And that's what brings people together. And for, multilingual students, those are other languages of expression. You don't need to know English to be successful in those mediums. And so we create times during our day where all our students can feel successful, because we are going to push and they are going to struggle in more traditional academic classes. But where is it that yoga, martial arts, choir, band, visual art class, drama, they love it, and they acquire language there as well and other skills.
You good, Jess?
Mm-hmm. For now.
So Luma, I have to ask this, and I'm asking it as from a coach's perspective and also from a human perspective, because when I'm listening to you, I hear this, you're very personable, right? There's this personhood in your voice. And the more I look at sports, especially on the higher levels and even starting in the high schools, I see programs that are getting away from being personable, right? With athletes. It's all about wins. It's all about production. It's all about the program. It's all about the school. You talk about soccer being a metaphor for life, assisting your learners on and off the field. Mm-hmm. Why is this important? And why soccer?
I think soccer, because it has that positive connotation of home, right? It's a sport you cannot win with a star player. People can make that argument. You cannot win with one star player. Messi cannot carry the Jordanian team to qualify for the World Cup. And I can say Jordan because we've never made qualifier, right? You need all 11 players to show up and work together. It is also the one sport where the coach is not in control, right? You can't call a timeout. By the time you call a play, it's something else. So you have to trust that what you have coached and taught the players is going to be great. You can make a few tweaks with subs. You can watch, hey, this player does need to take a break. But for the most part, you're not in control. You're observing, you're keeping steady. And that's what I love about it, because then you see creativity and beauty and community. And that's what you want the world to be. You don't want people to be controlled and American football is very controlled, right?
Yes.
I was like, oh, this is not, it drives me crazy. I was like, I want to see the creativity and the beauty and the there's passion, but it feels more robotic, right? Exactly what's going to happen. There's not a lot of flexibility on what play is going to get called. But in soccer, and it takes a long time to score a goal. So you have to be patient. But then when it happens, it's magical. And I think all sports, done right, builds character. We have if you don't pass, you don't play, right? Mm-hmm. And when we have that and team shares their grades with each other, they start supporting each other. They know, hey, you got to get to class and show up. Hey, we have a big test. I'm going to remind you and I'm going to practice with you, right? And they all understand they contribute in different ways. But done wrong, then, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if your academics are terrible. I'm still going to let you play at any cost, right? And what message are you sending to kids and people about that? We value one thing over the other. And that not everybody is valued in our society. That's not a message we want to send.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, the public sharing of the report cards, because when I read it, I was like, that is genius, because that is a communal, I know it mentions shame in the book, and shame being something, just an experience that may have been shared in the moment, but that communal responsibility that instantly kind of kicks in the face of that. I don't know how you said it was on the sidelines of a soccer game, but where did that come from?
So It started off kids would give me their report cards and I would let them, hey, And then one kid was like, no, she didn't let me play because I was late to practice. I was like, no, I'm a fair coach. You know exactly when you can't play. I was like, we're all sharing it together, right? And then they're like, hey, Mark, you need to show up to school. Like, they know who's attending school. This was before we started our school, right? And there's no shame in saying you're struggling with something, right? And other people in your community are responsible to help. We always celebrate who made the honor roll, right? By celebrating that, we're basically saying, hey, you guys did not, right? But we're not doing anything to get them to the honor roll, and for us, it's the opposite. It's like, we see what needs to be done. And sometimes kids have a hard time. You can have an A student, like, get a C, and everybody notices that. Every teacher, every adult in the building, every kid, and they're like, we've got your back. Like, we're going to take care of you. And you don't have to explain, yeah, it's, I think, a more Eastern approach. It's like community is very Eastern, individuality is very Western. And it's like, how can we blend the both? Because too much of an extreme is not good, right?
Yeah, this is very true. I have to say, I will remember this idea of creativity and patience, and that is a direct sign of humanity, right? That person that I was talking about.
Yeah.
So we know from our own experiences working with refugee background, Jessica and I, youth and immigrants, that more often than not, our K-12 schools operate in overdrive with loudspeakers yelling, college, 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 or get to class, do your homework, be on time. Yet in Learning America, you reflect on your own education and how the college-bound trajectory might not be best for, might not be best for all kids. Can you share more about your thoughts on this, Luma, and how the relationships you built with young people have taught you more about establishing their futures?
I mean, I think a lot of us do this. We impose our values and our lens on everyone else, right? And so, people ask, like, how is it that you got to college? Like, what? And I was like, well, there's never an option. Like, that is just, the choice was grad school for our family, right? But, my grandmother, she has a 6th grade education, right? And then her daughters all finished high school. Her youngest finished college, and then all her grandkids, all her granddaughters finished college, and a few went to grad school. So it was that incremental step by step, right? But for me, like, I don't know how familiar you are with, like, some of the charter schools, but, like, KIPP and that, like, they put the college pennants everywhere. That's all. Kid walks in, that's all they see.
They're bombarded.
And it's like Harvard, Stanford. It's like, not even like, we want you to go to college, but these are the ones we value. And I think for me, we had a senior so close to graduating, and his senior year failed a class, hadn't failed a class his entire 6 years with us, like nothing. I couldn't figure it out, like, what's going on. I was close to his family. No one could figure it out. And he didn't want to go to college. And he felt if that was not what he did, he would be disappointing us. Yeah. And that broke my heart. I'm like, wait, that's the only message you've been getting? And it was too late to, like, adapt and try to get him into an apprenticeship. And because that is what message we had been sending, like, in our hallways, in our talks to students. Like, I don't display, like, the only thing I display in my office are pictures of kids and my to-do list. And we don't have pennants anywhere, like college, they're nowhere. And then listening to kids, like, when you ask them, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? Someone will give you the answer they're supposed to give: doctor, engineer, lawyer, right? And you're like, but there's so much in between, right? And so many things that you can earn a good living.
Yeah.
And so exposing not only the kids, but the adults to all these other pathways that they can have buy-in into what it is. And when we ask kids, like, no, seriously, what is it that you want to be when you grow up? They're like, I want to take care of my mom. That's a very easy thing to do. It's a lot easier. Like, hey, then we're going to find something that you're good at, that you enjoy doing, that has upward mobility. And college isn't the only thing that gives you upward mobility.
That's true.
Yeah. And I'm not going to tell a kid to go to college and take on this ridiculous amount of debt with no guarantee of paying off that debt. That's not what I'll do. And so we say, if you can take out $5,000 in loans max a year that you can pay off because you feel that's manageable, anything more than that, you're in a hole for the rest of your life. And you don't want to be straddled with debt.
And that's something that William and I have personally now, because of our own experiences with this and that kind of trajectory, and just not knowing, because it's very easy to sign and very easy, to apply for scholarships and things, but that debt is real at the end. But it's something difficult that we've experienced our own selves, but now we're able to help the students that we're lucky to work with. That kind of goes into, at the end of Learning America, you were saying a mission would be to help all schools in the states and just districts in general have programs for students that maybe have interrupted education, that are newcomers in our public schools, and thinking that the Fugees could be a model, Fugees Academy could be a model and implemented for more and more students. Can you talk more though on that vision and what, teachers currently in our public schools, like William and I, in elementary, middle, high schools, what we might do to help this be successful?
So we launched, it's called Project Teranga, which is a Senegalese word for hospitality, community, and belonging. And, I fleshed it out like at the end of Learning America, then right after that. And we actually launched with a pilot district last fall. We launched it with Bowling Green, Kentucky, to help them design and open a newcomer program for life students, middle and high school age students, right? And we spent 6 months designing it with them based on our model, and then opened it in August to 80 students. They ended up by May having 120 students. It was opt-in only, and 100% of the students made one academic year gain, and 69% did 2+ years of gain, right? And so it's based on our model, arts is core, sports is core to it. It's about having community and loving accountability. And we worked with the teachers to help them, make sure they implement and set up our structures the right way, everything from our soccer teams to houses to the schedule. And then we did 72 hours of adult PD to the entire team. So every adult in the building attended the PD, everyone from the registrar, the cafeteria worker, to the teachers. It's one team, you're working as a team. And it surpassed our expectations, and I think they were hungry for something new. It wasn't based on a curriculum, it was based on an approach and a mindset. And meeting kids where they are, so you have 11, 12-year-olds who don't know the letters of the alphabet. We're teaching them the letters of the alphabet. And small classes, and it's like rapid acceleration. It's a sports approach, right? Like if you don't know soccer, we're not going to throw you into a game when you don't know how to pass or stop the ball, or like we have to teach you that. And so let's teach it. Once you know the fundamentals and those are solid, everything else falls into place. But if your fundamentals or foundational skills are not, then you're always playing catch up. You're trying to fill holes. And middle and high school teachers do not teach reading because everyone assumes by the time you come to middle school, you should know how to read. Well, our students didn't pick what age they fled the war or fled their countries. And so we have kindergarten teachers teaching that level 1 group because they're really good at it. And they're also really good at creating classrooms that kids want to be in, Yeah.
That's can I just piggyback off that? So it's for me, as a former athlete and also coach, I stress to the players that I work with that how important foundational skills are. And I also remind them that they should still practice them. Right? It should almost become a part of their being, right? Because we're so quick to look at what is popular and what is fashionable, but all those popular items and moves and strategies and fashionable passes and things of that nature, they're all rooted in these foundations.
Yep.
So the joy really should be at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like you should appreciate the process from the beginning.
Yeah.
So I'm really feeling that comment that you just made, because when people ask me, hey, Coach King, you know, why you have us doing the ABCs? I said, because the ABCs is how you survive.
It is how you survive. Like, I mean, Kobe Bryant talked about, like, you want to be great, you got to practice 3 to 4 hours a day. And he's practicing like how to dribble with his right hand left. It's not fancy. It's like the muscle memory has to kick in. Like, it has to keep getting activated, right? And same with your brain. Like, you have to practice that. And like in music, like any professional musician, they all warm up with the scales. They don't start playing right away. They got to like warm up, right? And so why aren't we doing that in education? You know, we want these like quick fixes, flashy new solutions, where it's like, no, there's something that works with the human brain and the human body that we've been doing really well, you know?
Okay, my next question. Speaking of student success, Learning America highlights teachers who have worked with you and the Fugees as well, sharing the style of teacher that has the talent to reach the students. And you kind of mentioned that a little bit just now. Can you share what you have learned about successful teachers who work with refugee background youth? And then how might we help other teachers to better reach young people coming to the United States from the refugee camps?
I think someone who's successful, like with working with our community, has to be humble. You know, this work is going to bring you to your knees. You're going to think you know how to do stuff, and then you're like, wait, I actually don't know how to do this. And you have to be willing to try new things and do an approach that may make you feel uncomfortable. A lot of teachers are uncomfortable with teaching ABCs to 11, 12, and 13-year-olds. You know, and my pushback to them is, we sent you to China, or we sent you to Jordan. You think you're going to be taught college level Arabic? You're not. You're going to learn how to sound out the letters and what they look like, and practice that till you get a strong foundation. And then everything falls into place, right? I think schools need to value the arts and athletics for every kid, not just once or twice a week, not as a nice to have, but as a core subject. You know, we have in our schools 3 structures that are essential, that we believe are essential for student success. So every kid's part of an academic cohort. So you're grouped academically by the level you're at within 1 to 2 years of each other. Then every kid belongs to a soccer team. And that group is a little different than your academic cohort, usually by gender, and with a span of 2 years, right? And then every kid is part of a house. So similar to Harry Potter style. She didn't invent that. It was for British boarding schools. And they're part of a house that spans all the ages in the building. And that allows for social safety nets. You are part of 3 social groups. So if you're having a bad time with your class, your team is there. If you're having a bad time with your class and your team, your house is there. You've got older kids mentoring younger kids. You're competing against each other, playing together, creating things together. You have to design the school experience so kids want to go to school. And it's not just, oh, let's all have it be fun and play, but kids and adults learn while playing. And adults need to be excited to come into the building. They shouldn't be dreading, oh God, here's another testing date. Here's another thing I have to check off. It's like, no, like, do right by kids. Yeah. And I think be hungry to learn about the kids you're working with, and find ways to learn from them. You know, like, that's what I think. I've become a better person, a better activist. Our schools have become better because we listen to our kids about what is not working. It could have been very easy for me to say, no, you know what, like, you screwed up your senior year, you should go into college, now you screwed up your future. Instead, no, we screwed it up. You know, you have to like admit when you make mistakes, and you will make mistakes. It's how you recover from those mistakes, you know. It's similar to soccer, right? Soccer is a game of mistakes. You're going to make a million mistakes. The team that wins is the one that knows how to handle them, recover with them, from them, and know when to take the opportunity when your other team messes up, right? And that's what we need to do.
I hear you speak and I think about all of, we were saying before, these trendy moves and things. And I feel that that happens in education a lot, where we kept getting these phrases of culturally responsive or sustaining or this. But I think when you have that child-centered approach and that community embedded approach, everything else just is
all
so
there.
in nature.
Yeah.
It's like that's it.
Yeah. We had one of we're asking the Bowling Green teachers, like, what's worked, what, was different with your experience at Taronga than was in your, middle and high school. And they're like, before this, culturally responsive teaching, trauma-informed education, those are just buzzwords. They're like, we don't even use the words, but we're doing it. Like, we're doing it because we center the kids, right? And they're like, now we know what that actually means. Before, they didn't know what it meant. Like, it was just like, I don't understand this. And now they know what it means. Yeah, sorry.
It sounds like it should be a requirement for all beginning teachers to at least have an internship at your schools, or at least observe in action what all of this really is. Which feels like me answering the question that I want to ask you, which is at the end of the chapter. Yeah, like, you had an ending, a beginning. What is it that you think will make for a better right now than there has been? And I personally want to just come to your school, observe, see it all. But what do you think?
I'd love to have you come visit. I'm going to share with you a video after this of some of the work that we did in Bowling Green. Like, we're launching partnerships, right? Like, so we're looking for districts that are willing to do things very differently than what's been done for their multilingual population. And we define refugees as anyone who's been forced from home, not just the federal government's legal definition, right? So, and we want people who are willing to move mountains for their kids, and be beginners and learners, and then be a coalition of trying to create better solutions, that we're always evolving and improving.
So we're coming back in. I think Tanya's arriving as we speak. We just flew back in for this conversation. Your work has friendship with the National Writing Project, with the Connecticut Writing Project. In any way we can help support this dream and this vision, we're here. I always kind of like speak about something that resonated with me before we get to the final question. And muscle memory was the thing that hit me. When I did my research, I was with these boys 24/7, right? And it was the coaches, the soccer coaches, where the real learning was happening. But I also learned that in the classrooms, where the teachers saw themselves more as coaches than as teachers, there was more success. There was some scrimmaging, there was some play, there was a lot of reflection. We're going to come back tomorrow and do this again. And I was in awe. But my research was interesting because I'm not an ESL teacher, I'm an English teacher. And so I was trying to figure out, how do mainstream teachers better help these students when they're in the classroom? And I learned that they don't really know how, and that the really good work was happening on the athletic fields, in the art rooms, and with the ESL teachers. Which brings me back to this idea of, I've always felt like I like music instruments. I tried to play everything. I quit. But the one thing I have never quit at, sports I played, and then I ended up quitting. I didn't go on. I never quit what I call the keyboard piano, which is learning to type my thoughts. And that's a muscle memory. Like when I was doing my research with the kids, they were talking and I was writing everything down as fast as I could. And everybody was running over to my screen saying, look at how mad fast this guy types everything we're saying. And I realized that didn't come overnight. That came from years and years and years of practice and sticking to the game of writing. And we know from our research in writing that writing is often assigned and not taught. And so state assessments come around and the kids have to write, but they've never had any practice being writers throughout the year. And how do you practice becoming a writer? Your story matters. And I think my boys over and over again have said there's 3 things you need to be successful in America: education, education, and education. How our universities define that, how our K-12 schools define that is not true. Education transcends those boundaries. And education is a mother and a father. And that's what makes us a family. And so your writing of these books and your story is helping so many of us who work with these populations to see that our community is larger than we actually thought. Mm-hmm. And there are ways to better reach the population of students that are coming into our classroom with beautiful stories still to be written. So I'm going to hand it over back to Jessica for the final question, and then Tanya has to close off the show.
Mm-hmm.
So we flip our beginning question now and ask, how do you help others to feel a sense of belonging? What do you do in your spaces so that others can become a part of the community? And how might our schools do a better job of this? And there is our prompt.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jessica and William. That was a lovely interview. Thank you, Luma. I probably can't talk without tears in my eyes, but your vision of what school can be is, I mean, I think someone my age knows that actually this is possible in the United States. I grew up in the 1970s in a rural school, and I had art and I had music. Mm-hmm. I went to a school that had shop classes and home economics classes, and believe it or not, a rifle range for people who were like headed toward the National Guard. But in fact, that meant everybody had something they were good at school. Mm-hmm. And it was a community space, and it wasn't as beautifully rendered, I don't think, as the vision that you're putting forward, but schools used to work that way in this country, and they could, and there's no need in such a wealthy nation for schools to be so unwelcoming and unattractive and uncaring. And I think that your just steady beating of this drum and showing that it's possible for every kid to be welcomed and cared for at school is the most important message I've heard in our country. And I'm so thankful to have been able to talk to you, to introduce you to anybody in our network who hasn't seen your work, and to get these. You got one upside down, friend.
One upside down.
I realize that. There you go.
Get these books into teachers' hands. So I thank you for the beautiful work that you are putting out in the world. I think for the beautiful work you are doing in your community, and for the time you're taking to make that vision more broadly available to all of us, to remember who we could be as a nation if we wanted to.
I mean, I think that's one thing refugees and immigrants bring, is this patriotism, or this lens of what America can do. Like, it's like nowhere in the world could I be doing this. Like, I couldn't criticize Jordan's public education system. I'd be tossed in jail for that, you know? Right. And so, like, you can actually do things here and create solutions and band together, and where other places you can't do it.
You and your work remind us what our best selves might be. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Audience, if you loved the show, and if you didn't, I don't believe you have a pulse. If you loved this show, then please go to nwp.org and sign up for our Right Now newsletter so you never miss one. Also join our community where we talk about things like this show and books like Luma's books. You can join the studio at studio.nwp.org. And you can find this podcast at NWP bit.ly, bit.ly NWP radio. Thank you, everyone. And again, Jessica and William, as you know, it's always my pleasure to have the opportunity to talk to you about your work. And I appreciate you representing the network tonight. And Luma, thank you so much for spending your time with us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Luma.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you all.
You're listening
Thank you,
to
Tanya.
NWP
Thank you,
Radio,
Brian.
a production of the National Writing Project.
NWP. NWP Radio.